You are listening to your NFL Week 2 preview here, free and exclusively on the Lock Betting podcast. Lock Betting is on social media at Lock Betting, on YouTube, on Instagram and on Truth Social, and also on TikTok. That one is at Lock Betting TT for TikTok. That's at Lock Betting TT. So we're doing this preview again on Sunday. I want to start getting these out on Saturday, but I was really looking for some late line movement, trying to make as much sense as possible as I could from these lines, because obviously week 2 is overreaction week. Lines can go all over the place based on what we saw on week 1. This is the week where I believe on most occasions where you get the most changes from the look ahead. Obviously, over the course of the season, we have look ahead lines, and if someone was expected to do really well and they haven't, and if a team have performed according to expectations, you may see a line that changes by as much as 6 or 7 points later on in the season. But here in week 2, you see the most lines changing based on reactions to the first week. And that isn't necessarily correct. Usually, if you're a decent bettor, that does provide you with opportunities. But I was saying on the last show, I believe that public bettors have got a lot smarter, have got a lot sharper. So we're not seeing as much as we usually would. For example, the Carolina Panthers would usually be a smart play. I recently spoke about that game over on YouTube, and I did expect the Carolina Panthers after last week to move to 7. I thought the public would see that performance. They would be all off the Carolina Panthers train, and they would be piling money down on the Chargers. However, that has not been the case, and instead we have seen the line move the other way. In some years, this would be a line where the Panthers got to 7, maybe even 7.5. Instead, we are now looking at them being at 5.5, and they opened up at 6.5 after a god-awful performance last weekend. They were absolutely woeful. They looked out of their depth in every single position, from Bryce Young to the defense. They were absolutely lit up by the New Orleans Saints. Now, off the back of that one game, people would watch that and think the New Orleans Saints are good, and we may see some movement in the line between themselves and Dallas. We've seen no movement at all. This has been a line that has absolutely stuck throughout the week. The Cowboys opened at 6. It moved a little bit to 6.5. Then it moved a bit to 5.5. But then it has gone back to 6. So both these teams coming off an impressive performance, and it has not affected the line whatsoever. So I don't want to go too deep into what moved, what didn't move, what it means, what it doesn't mean. You will get some trend analysis on here, but not too much to the point where we're just giving out our best picks for free. Because if you want our picks, you need to head over to lockbetting.com, where we've made money in the NFL for 11 straight years and have specifically blitzed the last 3 seasons. Obviously, I'm talking about the ultimate pack when I'm talking about lock betting, which will get you all sports. But if you just specifically want to bet on the NFL, we do put out 3 picks each. 3 from me, 3 from Cav, and you just need to go to NFL Pick 6. That's patreon.com/NFL Pick 6, and you'll get 3 from me, 3 from Cav. I'm on a bounce back after going 1-3 last week. It was not a good week for me on the 6-pack. I only made a narrow loss over at Lock Betting, where I did a little bit better. Coming into Monday, I did have an opportunity to make it a profitable week 1. All I needed to do was to go 4-2 with my plays for Monday Night Football. They were mostly props, and unfortunately it went 3-3. So I made it a little bit worse, but it was not a significant loss at all. You'll take that on week 1 to make a small loss of under 1 unit. That's absolutely fine for week 1 when you don't really know. We don't really have too much to go on. We've been lucky the past few seasons where we've managed to navigate week 1 quite nicely. This was not the case, but it was for Cav, because Cav went 2-1 on a 6-pack and I went 1-3. Shouldn't have really given out 4 picks, given it's a 6-pack. It's supposed to be 3 each, but I wanted to start straight out with a bonus pick, and that did not help. So let's move on with the slate. we start with the game which sees the Cleveland Browns traveling to Jacksonville. The Browns are getting 3.5 points, and the total here is 41. Don't know what to really make of this. The Jags sort of threw away the game last week, and Deshaun Watson looked awful. He looks like a player who shouldn't be playing in the NFL anymore. It looks like the Browns have invested a lot of money in him poorly and aren't going to get anything back on their investment. As I said, he just looks like a player who can't play the quarterback position anymore, and they need him to. They need him to if they want to be playing in the postseason. I do believe that 3.5 points is too much, and that's not me believing that Deshaun Watson is good, but it's me believing that the Jacksonville Jaguars shouldn't be laying 3.5 points against this Browns defense. It is worth noting the Browns defense didn't travel as well as it played at home, and last week they were lit up at home by Dallas, so that is kind of concerning. But if we look a little bit deeper into this, I don't think Deshaun Watson's stats were as bad as they indicate. His receivers did drop 4 passes, including what would have been a surefire 40-yard touchdown. He gets tackle Jack Conklin back here for this game. He had a knee injury, but I'm being told, or I'm reading, it's been reported that, I'm not being told, it's been reported that he practiced on Wednesday. We know the Jags are without top corner Tyson Campbell. The Jags at home as a favourite are 3-6 ATS with Trevor Lawrence, and the average failed to cover is 4.1 points per game. So I think this will be a game that goes down to the wire. I think coming into the season, I had these teams pretty evenly rated. I would say Cleveland slightly better. So I would probably make Jags a 1, maybe 2 point favourite, but we're getting 3 in the hook here. And that interests me. So I'm going to take that. I think 3 in the hook in a close game is good enough for me to lean towards the Cleveland Browns here in this one. Next, we have my Green Bay Packers at home to the Colts, where the Packers are 3-point underdogs, and the total here is 41. Immediately, I sort of go more towards the total because we cannot put the ball in the hands of Willis because, for lack of being more analytical and insightful as I should be, he's shit. He is a terrible, terrible quarterback. He is not an NFL quarterback. And we are probably going to be looking to run the ball. The Colts are definitely looking to run the ball at us because no matter how many additions we make to our defense, the Pack do not seem to be able to stop the run. So it's going to be a run-heavy game on both sides. I just don't see where Green Bay are going to put up the points here. We're not going to be able to stop the run. We've got Anthony Richardson in the quarterback position for the Colts, and he was impressive in Indy's opening loss, and obviously he's far better than Malik Willis. Willis is definitely a contender for the least accomplished NFL backup this season, and it's fair to say that he would be the biggest drop down for a team to lose their quarterback. He would be the biggest drop down. This would be the biggest point swing that we would see from Green Bay being 5.5, 6 point favourites to now giving up 3 points, which would indicate that Jordan Love is worth 8.5. I've listened to shows this week to say no quarterback's worth that and making a key case for Green Bay. Listen, I'd love it if that case was valid, but I just can't get there with us. I don't see how we win this game. Don't see how we stay in the game. Colts is a side for me. Up next, we've got the game I've spoken about between the Panthers and the Chargers. I'm going to just not talk about this. I'm going to direct you to my YouTube video over at Lock Betting. It's K100 episode 1, K100 Sports, where I analyse a number of sports, tennis, EPL Match Day 4, and NFL Week 2 as well, where I talk about Overreaction Week. And I specifically talk about this game, and there is some incredible data surrounding this game. So head over to the Lock Betting YouTube if you want to hear my analysis on this game. We'll move on to the Ravens versus the Raiders, where this one's been all over the place, but it's landed at the moment on 8 points for the Ravens, and the total here is 41.5. Baltimore at home off a loss is appealing. It is worrying because the Raiders and the Chargers, that was a bit of a false result last week because it changed on a mistake. Minshew was able to move the ball. He looked okay. The Raiders just didn't have the points to back that up. But I think this is a spot where you do take the Ravens to kind of bounce back off a loss. I don't see how they don't win this game by 8. But also, it is worth noting, I don't think the Raiders are as bad as their result last week. I've seen people say that the offense looked sluggish and Minshew looked ineffective, but they were moving the ball. The Ravens here, though, are 0-1. They were an inch away from forcing overtime. And I think that would have actually been a 2-point game-winning conversion, actually. I don't think it would have been overtime. In Lamar, they got straight back into the swing of things after he sat out the pre-season. He had the kinks worked out by the opening drive where Baltimore were able to score. If they get off to a fast start here, they may end up winning this game by 20 plus. I don't think they're going to be caught out by any Minshew magic. They will remember that Gardner Minshew engineered an overtime upset at M&T Bank Stadium while with the Colts last season. So I think they're going to be aware of that. There's not going to be any surprises here. They're coming off a loss. The Ravens are absolutely not going to make an 0-2 start. So for me, take the 8 here in this one. Up next, we move on to the Cowboys at home to the Saints, where, as we mentioned earlier, the Cowboys are -6 favourites, and the total here is 46.5. For me, this is a very easy play on Dallas. I don't necessarily know if this one's going to make my card, but this is the type of game that Dallas were winning last year. They were comfortably winning this game at home last season. I know what the Saints did last weekend, but I'm not going to put too much weight behind that. It's going to be difficult for the Saints to score those same points when Derek Carr is being constantly pressured by this Dallas defense. It's a very, very different game. For the Cowboys to cover, they'll need to score points against a Saints defense, which is overrated, but they've got players who are banged up. The Cowboys know how to exploit those issues. If they get themselves in front, I believe they'll have the game in the bag. Cowboys just win this type of game at home. It's as simple as that. Ultimately, what you have here is two of the, if not the most two impressive games coming out of week 1. But the Cowboys dominating Cleveland is a lot different to the Saints winning at home to the Carolina Panthers. And I go back to last season where Dallas generally routed teams at Jerry's World last year with 6 wins by at least 20 points until the playoffs games. The Cowboys are also 6-1 ATS in their past 7 overall as at least 5-point favourites. So when they're favourites like this, they usually just get the job done and make you money as well. Up next, ugly game where the Giants are getting 2 points going to the Commanders. The total is 43.5. I'm not going to waste my time here. The Giants usually win this game. They beat the Commanders. Both teams are shit, and we'll be glossing over them this season. Up next, we move on to the Titans and the Jets, where the Titans are getting 4 points over the Jets here at home. And the total here is 41. 4 points is a lot to give to a home team. I know the public are going to be well off Tennessee. Tennessee were a public dog last week. And as I said, the public have got smarter. They've got sharper. Yes, they lost money, but the fact that they were going against Caleb Williams and did not buy into the hype tells you that the public are behaving differently. And not just this season. I think this season it's clearer. It's been more under the magnifying glass, but I believe that has been slowly becoming the case over the past few years. So now they've lost money on this team, I believe they'll be off it, but I don't believe that they should be off it. This is a horrible spot for the New York Jets coming off Monday Night Football, where they spent a ton of time on the field. The Jets defense was on the field for 35 minutes in that game. That makes it very, very difficult to win. I've got some data here on the game. Teams who have under 25 minutes of possession in week 1 end up going 8-23 straight up and 6-25 ATS in week 2. There was more data here for this game, and I'm going to talk about it behind the paywall. And don't want to spend too much time on this game because there is a play that I like here, and you can get that one over on Lock Betting or on the Six Pack. So we'll move off it, and we'll move on to the game between the Seahawks and the Patriots, where the hook has gone here. It started at 4 and it was at 3.5, and now Seahawks are only 3-point favourites with a low total of 38.5. I guess the books are expecting a low-scoring game where they both run the ball, and I think that's why this has got down to 3 points, because it's difficult to win a game with margin, which is a low-scoring game. But I think the Seahawks will be able to do it. I think the upgrade on the Patriots after beating the Bengals, who may have beaten a team who have a washed-up quarterback. Not washed up in terms of age, but he may have an injury that he doesn't ever recover from, that may change the quarterback he is now and forever. It's just not known what Joe Burrow is going to look like in the future. But the Patriots were able to get the upset. They had some luck as far as turnovers go, but it was all about the defense. They did not pull off a single play that went as far as 20 yards. Seattle coach Mike McDonald, a defensive specialist, should be able to contain what is an ultra-conservative offense. I don't know where the points are coming from for the Patriots. His predecessor, Pete Carroll, bought 35 Seahawks teams east for an early kickoff, and they even won more than 2/3 outright, which bodes well for his successor, who is going to come up with a solid defensive game plan here, which I think may even stop the Patriots getting to double digits, which means I have to take the 3 points here for Seattle. Up next, we move on to the best game, at least on paper, from or at least it's the one on TV here in the UK from the early window, where the Vikings are getting 4.5 points. It's minus 4.5 on the 49ers, and the total here is 46.5. I just can't get there with Sam Darnold and the Vikings here after what we saw from the 49ers. I would have thought this line would move the other way, but instead it's moved down, and the Vikings have gone from 5.5 to 4.5 point favourites. I just can't get there. I actually think this is an opportunity to bet on a public team who looked very good, a Super Bowl contender. I believe that they win again here and cover. I don't have too much really to say about this game, other than I'm surprised the way the line's gone. Up next, we have the Detroit Lions laying 7.5 points against the Bucks, and the total here is 51.5. Do you know what Detroit do? Detroit just destroy teams at home, and they cover spreads. They have been the best spread team over the last couple of seasons, and I don't really see too much changing here. I think Detroit win this game and win this game comfortably. Tampa have some injuries, which I think are really going to be a problem for them here this week. But this ultimately comes down to Detroit at home. They win games like this, although they were fortunate last week, some people will say, because they won in overtime. When they needed to do what they needed to do to win that game in overtime, they got up the field relatively easily. They're going to be sizable favourites every single week, especially at home. And now the look ahead for this was 3.5, but that's ballooned against the number because people are aware of the injuries that Tampa Bay have. This is the third matchup between the Lions and the Buccaneers over the past 2 seasons, and the Patriots have always been an untrustworthy team historically off a big win. So for me, I land on Detroit here. Detroit's secondary didn't completely shut down the Rams last week, which is worrying, but they certainly fared better than last season. And I expect that pass rush to make life difficult for Baker Mayfield here. Talking about the injuries, the ones I'm talking about are the fact the Bucs lost 3 CBs to injury in week 1. And that will mean they'll struggle even more to contain this defense. There's a reason it's moved, but I'm not worried. The fact that it's moved from 6 to 7. It did touch 7.5. It's still at 7.5 in some places. I think we are good for anything less than double digits. I'm expecting a double-digit win for Detroit. Up next, we move over to the late kickoffs. And I think Cav has covered the Chiefs and the Bengals. So I am left with... In fact, I actually forgot the format of the whole show here. So I'm not supposed to talk about the Bears. I'm not supposed to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm not supposed to talk about any of the primetime games. So I did accidentally cover the 49ers game, although I did not go too in depth. So that does only leave me two games, which is the Rams and the Cardinals, and the Broncos versus the Steelers. Rams versus Cardinals is up first in the 9:05 kickoff time in my country. You've got the Rams getting 1.5 points here, but Sean McVay owns the Cardinals. Now, we spoke about injuries last time out, so we can't not talk about them here. The Rams do have them, but I just feel it gets to the point where when someone owns you, he owns you. And we've seen a big ownership win this week with the Buffalo Bills, who own the Miami Dolphins, getting it done on Thursday night. So for me, even though the Rams are banged up, and they were banged up at the start of the season anyway, with injuries to Puka Nacua and a number of offensive linemen. However, I just don't like them. I just don't think they should be underdog against the Cardinals. They gave the Lions a great fight in week one. I just don't see them as an 0-2, making an 0-2 start, coming off that performance, coming off neutralising Amon St. Brown, Stafford and Cooper Kupp. That's all you really need here. They love playing against this team. Following a loss, the Rams are 24-15-3 under Sean McVay, whilst the Cardinals under Kyler Murray are ATS 5-11 as a home favourite, whilst the Cardinals are also being overrated because they had a close game against the Buffalo Bills, and Sean McVay owns this team, as I said. Final game I'm going to cover is going to be between the Steelers and the Broncos, where Broncos are getting 3 points at home here. I'd like 3.5, but 3 points is pretty good, and the total here is, I think, the lowest of the week, 36.5. For me, I don't want to go to Denver. I don't want to go to Denver to play a football game this early on in the season, whilst Denver still have hope of doing something this season. So despite the fact that Pittsburgh did get an impressive win last week against Atlanta, I'm going to be on the Denver side of things. Now, it was an incredibly good defensive performance on the road. Great start for the Steelers. However, the offense had nothing to show. They only scored field goals and still won the game. And now they're on the road for the second consecutive week, going to altitude. Denver's rookie quarterback, Bo Nix did not have a good first game, yes. But stuck with it and got the Broncos into the end zone on their final drive. I believe he improves this week. Last week, he rushed 5 times for 35 yards. I expect him to take off again and try to get first downs here against this Steelers offense. I think the market is a little bit low on Bo Nix. I think he's low on his rushing yards as well, if you want to look at that as a prop. Will he throw an interception again? Yeah, he probably will. I think that's another good bet. That was something that cashed for us last week. But as far as the play goes, I think Broncos getting 3 points at home in altitude have to be the side against the Steelers offense that did nothing in winning last week against Atlanta. So that's it. That's week 2 covered. The games that I've been allocated. Anyway, if you want to get my official plays, they are a lot. If you want to get my plays on all sports, including soccer, tennis, UFC, where we had a 2-0 sweep last night, and the NFL, it's the ultimate pack over at Lock Betting. But if you just want 3 picks from me, my best 3 picks in the NFL, and 3 from Cav as well, who did better than me last week, then go to patreon.com/NFL Pick 6. That's patreon.com/NFL Pick 6. I'll be back next week. I'll be putting this show out earlier. Me and Cav will be doing a recap show on Sunday. We'll be doing that during the Sunday Night Football game. So make sure you check that out. Until then, good luck with all your bets as always. And thanks for listening.